the quiet man, and the gunslinger.
Vera Cruz didn't play by Western rules. It threw them in the dirt. Two anti-heroes, one treasure, and a Mexican revolution caught in the crossfire. But behind the cameras, the war was just as real. The stars hated each other, stunts went wrong. And the director, he nearly got the whole cast killed in a minefield. These are 20 weird facts about Vera Cruz. And the bonus? Let's just say one actor's smile hit a knife and the other one knew it. Saddle up. This ride doesn't end clean. Number 1. On paper, Gary Cooper and Burt Lancaster were perfect. Two Hollywood heavyweights, two different styles. Cooper, the quiet hero with the moral compass. Lancaster, the grinning wild card who played every scene like a coiled spring. The studio thought they'd balance each other. What they got was a cold war. From day one, the tension was thick. Cooper didn't trust Lancaster's energy. Too big, too theatrical, too much. Lancaster thought Cooper was stiff, outdated, playing the same tired cowboy he'd played 100 times before. They barely spoke off camera. No dinners, no drinks, no small talk between takes. When they had scenes together, they'd rehearse separately, then meet on set like boxers touching gloves before a fight. Director Robert Aldrich loved it. He didn't try to fix it. He fed it. He told them both to lean into the mistrust, to let the animosity bleed into their characters, and it worked. Because Vera Cruz wasn't about friendship. It was about two men circling each other, waiting to see who'd pull the trigger first. The hatred wasn't acting, it was survival. Number 2. Burt Lancaster didn't just smile in Vera Cruz. He weaponized it. That grin, wide, predatory, dangerous, became the signature of his character, Joe Aaron. But here's the thing, Lancaster knew exactly what he was doing. He studied Cooper between takes, watching how the veteran actor moved, how he underplayed every moment, how he commanded the screen with stillness, and Lancaster decided to do the opposite. He'd flash that smile at the worst possible moments, during threats, during betrayals, during killings. It unnerved everyone, especially Cooper. In one scene, Lancaster was supposed to deliver a line straight. Instead, he threw in the grin mid-sentence, completely off script. Cooper froze. The crew held their breath. Aldrich called cut, watched the playback, then told them to keep rolling. That smile became the soul of the film. It said everything the script couldn't. I'm dangerous, I'm unpredictable, and I'm 2 steps ahead of you. Cooper later admitted he never knew when Lancaster was acting and when he was just messing with him. And that ambiguity, that edge, it made every scene between them electric. Number 3. Vera Cruz was supposed to be shot in Texas, maybe Arizona. Somewhere safe, somewhere controlled, somewhere the studio could manage. But Robert Aldrich had other plans. He wanted authenticity. He wanted heat, dust, chaos. So he took the entire production to Mexico. Not a backlot recreation. The real thing. They filmed in Morelos, in the actual locations where revolutionary battles had been fought decades earlier. The landscapes were stunning. The logistics were a nightmare. Equipment broke down in the heat. The crew got sick from the water. Local extras didn't speak English, and most of the American cast didn't speak Spanish. Communication happened through translators, hand signals, and a lot of shouting. The schedule fell apart within the first week. What was supposed to be a tight 60-day shoot stretched into months. The studio panicked. They threatened to pull funding. But Aldrich refused to leave. He said if they forced him back to Hollywood, he'd quit. So they stayed. And every frame of Vera Cruz, the sweat, the grit, the danger, it's all real. Because they filmed it in a country that hadn't forgotten what war looked like. Number 4. The explosions in Vera Cruz weren't just for show. They were massive, uncontrolled, and borderline insane. Aldrich hired a Mexican effects team known for working on low-budget action films where safety was more of a suggestion than a rule. They used real dynamite, not Hollywood pyrotechnics, and they used a lot of it. In one scene, a building was supposed to blow during a gunfight. The effects team wired it up, set the charges, and told the actors to stay at least 50 feet back. Aldrich wanted a closer shot, so he moved the cameras in. The actors followed. When the blast went off, debris rained down on everyone. Chunks of wood, stone, and dirt flew past Lancaster's head. Cooper hit the ground. One crew member got knocked flat by the shockwave. Aldrich, standing behind the camera, didn't flinch. He watched the whole thing through the viewfinder, then called for another take. The crew thought he was insane, but when they saw the footage, they understood. The chaos, the danger, the terror on the actors' faces, it was all real. You can't fake that kind of energy, and Aldrich knew it. Number 5. Most westerns of the 1950s had clear heroes and villains. Good guys wore white hats, bad guys wore black. The audience always knew who to root for. Vera Cruz destroyed that formula. Cooper's character, Ben Train, starts as a former Confederate officer looking for money. Lancaster's Joe Aaron is a mercenary who'd sell his own mother for the right price. Neither one is clean, neither one is good. They lie, they cheat, they kill without hesitation. And the studio hated it. Test audiences were confused. They didn't know who to cheer for. Some walked out. Executives demanded rewrites, scenes that would clarify the moral lines, moments where Cooper's character would show traditional heroism. Aldrich and the writers refused. They said the whole point was the ambiguity. These weren't heroes. They were opportunists caught in someone else's war. The studio threatened to recut the film. Aldrich threatened to have his name removed. It went back and forth for weeks. In the end, the film stayed as it was, morally murky, ethically bankrupt, and completely honest. And audiences eventually caught up, because Vera Cruz didn't just bend the Western genre, it broke it in half and showed what was really underneath. Number 6. The Mexican extras weren't just background. They were real revolutionaries, or at least their descendants. Aldrich cast hundreds of locals from villages around Morelos, many of whom had family members who fought in the Mexican Revolution. Some of them brought their own weapons, old rifles, pistols, machetes passed down through generations. When it came time to film the battle scenes, Aldrich barely had to direct them. They knew how to move, how to fight, how to die. They'd heard the stories their whole lives. In one massive sequence involving hundreds of soldiers charging across a field, Aldrich gave a simple instruction: fight like your grandfathers did. The cameras rolled, and what happened next wasn't choreography, it was memory. The extras moved with a ferocity that stunned the American crew. Some of them were crying, others were shouting in Spanish, words no one translated but everyone understood. When Aldrich called cut, the field went silent. The locals didn't move right away. They stood there, breathing hard, living in a moment that belonged to the past. It took several minutes before anyone spoke, and when the footage was developed, everyone knew they'd captured something unrepeatable. Not a movie, a recollection. Number 7. The famous stagecoach chase wasn't supposed to happen at all. It wasn't in the script, wasn't budgeted, wasn't planned. But during a location scout, Aldrich saw a narrow mountain road with a steep drop on one side, and an idea hit him. He called the stunt coordinator and said, "Can we flip a coach off that cliff?" The coordinator said it was possible but insane. No safety nets, no second takes, no room for error. Aldrich didn't care. He rewrote the scene overnight, brought in a reinforced stagecoach, and hired the most reckless stunt drivers he could find. On the day of the shoot, the entire crew lined the ridge, cameras positioned at 3 different angles to make sure they got it. The plan was simple. The coach would race down the road, hit a ramp hidden behind a curve, and tumble off the edge. Horses would be released just before impact. One shot. That's all they had. The drivers climbed into position. Aldrich called action. The coach barreled forward, wheels screaming, dust exploding behind it. It hit the ramp, launched into the air, and for a split second it seemed to hang there, suspended. Then it dropped. The crash was deafening. Wood splintered, metal bent. The coach rolled 3 times before slamming into the canyon floor. The crew erupted in cheers. The drivers crawled out, bruised but alive. Aldrich watched the playback in silence, then nodded once. That's in the movie, and it was. Every brutal second. Number 8. Gary Cooper was 53 years old during filming, and he was dying. Not quickly, not obviously, but dying nonetheless. He had cancer, though he didn't know it yet. What he did know was that his body wasn't keeping up. His back hurt constantly. The heat drained him. The stunts, even the simple ones, left him gasping. He'd finish a take, walk off camera, and collapse in a chair while the crew pretended not to notice. Lancaster, for all their tension, saw it, and in his own way, he helped. He'd take longer setups, giving Cooper time to rest. He'd volunteer for the harder stunts, pulling focus away from the veteran actor who could barely stay upright. Cooper never thanked him. They never talked about it, but there was an unspoken understanding. Aldrich saw it too. He started adjusting shots, using stunt doubles more, framing scenes so Cooper could deliver his lines without excessive movement. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Here was a man playing a gunslinger, a soldier, a mercenary, while his own body betrayed him. Number 9. The film's climax, the betrayal scene where everything falls apart, was rewritten the night before shooting. The original script had Cooper's character killing Lancasters in a straightforward duel. Clean, quick, morally satisfying. But Aldrich hated it. He thought it was too easy, too expected. So he locked himself in a room with the writers and stayed up until dawn, rewriting the entire sequence. The new version was uglier, more complicated. Instead of a duel, it became an ambush. Instead of honor, it became survival. When the cast arrived on set the next morning, they were handed new pages. Lancaster read his, smiled, and said, "Now we're talking." Cooper read his and said nothing. They filmed the scene in one long take, no rehearsal, no safety net. The tension was unbearable. Every line felt like it could be the one that broke the silence. When it was over, Aldrich didn't call cut right away. He let the cameras keep rolling, watching both actors breathe, watching them process what they'd just done. Then, finally, cut. No one spoke. The crew just started setting up the next shot, because there was nothing left to say. The scene had said everything. Number 10. When Vera Cruz premiered, critics didn't know what to make of it. Some called it brilliant. Others called it nihilistic. The violence was shocking for 1954. The moral ambiguity was too much for mainstream audiences used to John Wayne riding off into the sunset. But in Europe, especially in France, it became a sensation. French critics, particularly those associated with the Cahiers du Cinéma, called it revolutionary. They said Aldrich had stripped the Western down to its raw truth. No mythology, no romanticism, just greed and violence dressed in cowboy hats. A young filmmaker named Sergio Leone saw it and had a revelation. Years later, he'd admit that A Fistful of Dollars, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and his entire spaghetti Western movement existed because of Vera Cruz. He said Aldrich showed him that Westerns didn't need heroes. They just needed men with guns and something worth killing for. Without Vera Cruz, there's no Leone. Without Leone, there's no modern Western. The film that American critics dismissed as too dark, too cynical, too mean, ended up reshaping the entire genre. And it did it by refusing to lie, because in the end, Vera Cruz wasn't a Western. It was a war film in disguise. And war, it never bothered with heroes. Number 11. The treasure everyone's fighting over in Vera Cruz, $3 million in gold coins, wasn't fake. Well, not entirely. The production couldn't afford to create convincing replicas for every shot, especially the close-ups where the camera lingered on piles of gleaming coins. So they made a deal with a Mexican bank. They borrowed real gold coins, hundreds of pounds worth, under armed guard. Every morning, security trucks arrived on set carrying locked cases. Every night, they took them back. During filming, armed guards stood just out of frame watching the actors handle fortune after fortune. Lancaster joked that it was the only time in his career he'd held real wealth while playing a thief. But the security wasn't just about theft, it was about safety. With that much gold on a remote location, word spread fast. Local bandits, remnants of old revolutionary groups, still operated in the mountains. Aldrich received threats, warnings that his production was being watched. He hired additional security, posted guards around the perimeter, and never left the coins unattended. There were nights when gunshots echoed in the distance, and no one was sure if they were part of someone else's trouble or a warning meant for them. The gold made it through production untouched, but everyone knew they'd been one bad decision away from a real-life heist that would have made the movie look tame. Number 12. Denise Darcel, the French actress who played the Countess Marie Duvar, had one major problem with her role: the costumes. Jean-Louis, the legendary costume designer, created elaborate gowns for her character, low-cut, corseted, designed to stop men in their tracks, but they weren't designed for the Mexican heat or the physical demands of filming. The corsets were so tight Darcel could barely breathe. During one scene where she had to run, she passed out mid-take. The crew rushed in, loosened the lacing, and revived her with water. When she came to, she told Aldrich she wouldn't wear it anymore. He told her the costume stayed. They compromised. For wide shots, she'd wear the full corset. For close-ups and dialogue, they'd loosen it just enough for her to function. But the damage was done. Darcel spent the rest of filming uncomfortable, restricted, barely able to eat between takes. She later said Vera Cruz was the most physically punishing role of her career, not because of stunts or action, but because of what she had to wear while standing still. Beauty, she learned, had a price. Number 13. The film's most dangerous sequence didn't involve explosions or stunts, it involved landmines, real ones, left over from Mexican military exercises years earlier, never properly cleared. The crew discovered this the hard way when a production assistant wandered off the marked path and his foot hit something that clicked. He froze. Everyone froze. Aldrich called for silence, then slowly approached. It wasn't armed, just buried, but it was real. They brought in a military engineer from a nearby base who confirmed what everyone feared. The entire filming location, several acres of desert terrain they'd been using for weeks, was potentially littered with unexploded ordnance. The engineers started a sweep. They found 11 more devices, some buried shallow, others barely concealed. Production shut down for 3 days while the area was cleared. Actors who'd been running, falling, rolling in that dirt for weeks realized how close they'd come. Lancaster later joked that Joe Aaron survived the movie, but Burt Lancaster almost didn't. Cooper said nothing. He just stopped walking anywhere without checking the ground first. Aldrich, when asked if he'd known about the mines, gave an answer that's still debated. "I knew the land had history. I didn't know it was still armed." Whether he was telling the truth or playing director roulette with his cast's lives, no one ever confirmed. But after that, every step on location felt different, heavier, because they knew the ground beneath them had teeth. Number 14. The Mexican government almost shut down the entire production, not because of safety violations or permits, but because of politics. The film depicted the Mexican Revolution, a sensitive subject still living in national memory. Government officials worried the portrayal would be disrespectful, that Hollywood would turn their history into cheap entertainment. They sent representatives to observe filming, to review scenes, to ensure nothing crossed the line. Aldrich walked a razor's edge. He needed their cooperation but wouldn't change his vision. So he made a calculated move. He hired Mexican consultants, historians, and veterans to advise on accuracy. He showed the officials that he wasn't mocking the revolution, he was taking it seriously. More seriously than most American Westerns took anything. He invited government ministers to watch dailies, to see the respect given to the Mexican characters, the complexity of the political landscape. Slowly, they came around, but there were conditions. Certain lines were modified. A few scenes were reframed to avoid specific political implications. And one sequence, a brutal execution that the government felt went too far, was cut entirely. It never made it to the final film. Aldrich agreed to every demand publicly. Privately, he told his editors to save everything they cut. Decades later, some of that lost footage surfaced, and it confirmed what everyone suspected. The version Aldrich wanted to make was even darker than what we got. Number 15. Charles Bronson wasn't famous yet. He was just another character actor grinding through supporting roles, taking whatever work came. In Vera Cruz, he played a member of Lancaster's gang. Barely any lines, mostly background. But Aldrich saw something. Between takes, he'd watch Bronson, the way he moved, the intensity in his silence. One day, Aldrich pulled him aside and told him, "You don't need dialogue to own a scene." Bronson didn't know what to do with that. So Aldrich started giving him moments. A look here, a reaction there, small beats that let Bronson's presence fill the frame without saying a word. Lancaster noticed too. He started playing off Bronson, feeding him opportunities to respond non-verbally. By the end of filming, Bronson had barely spoken 10 lines, but everyone on set knew his face. Years later, when Bronson became an international star known for his silent intensity, journalists asked where he learned that style. He always gave the same answer: Vera Cruz. Aldrich taught me that presence beats dialogue every time. The film didn't make him famous, but it taught him how to be unforgettable. And in Hollywood, sometimes that's worth more than a starring role. Number 16. The horses suffered more than anyone wanted to admit. Western films in the 1950s weren't kind to animals. Safety regulations barely existed. Stunts that would be illegal today were standard practice. In Vera Cruz, horses were pushed hard, long days in brutal heat, galloping across rough terrain, performing falls that even experienced stunt horses struggled with. At least 3 horses were injured badly enough they couldn't continue working. One broke a leg during a chase scene and had to be put down on location. The cast and crew were devastated, but Aldrich kept filming. He had a schedule to maintain, a budget to protect. Animal welfare wasn't a priority. It wasn't cruelty exactly. It was the era. This was before Hollywood had enforceable standards, before the American Humane Association had real authority on sets. Vera Cruz was one of the films that eventually changed that. The stories that came out afterward, whispered by crew members, reported by journalists who visited the set, contributed to a growing movement demanding better treatment of animals in film. By the 1960s, new rules were in place, but for the horses of Vera Cruz, those protections came too late. They gave everything for a movie that never thanked them, and that's a cost no one likes to talk about. Number 17. The final shootout, the one everyone remembers, almost ended with Gary Cooper dead. Not his character, Cooper himself. The scene required him to dive behind cover while explosions went off around him. The timing was critical. Move too early, it looks fake. Move too late, you're inside the blast radius. They rehearsed it 3 times. Cooper nailed it every time. But on the 4th take, the one Aldrich wanted for the final cut, something went wrong. The explosive charge detonated half a second early. Cooper was still in motion, exposed, directly in the path of flying debris. A piece of shrapnel, later identified as a chunk of rock launched by the blast, missed his head by inches. It sliced through the air so close the crew heard it whistle. Cooper hit the ground hard, instinct overriding everything else. When the dust cleared, he was lying face down, not moving. Everyone ran. Lancaster got there first, pulling Cooper up by the shoulders. The older actor was dazed, ears ringing but alive. Aldrich checked him over, asked if he could continue. Cooper, still catching his breath, just nodded. They filmed 2 more takes. He never mentioned it again, but the crew didn't forget. For the rest of the shoot, everyone watched the explosions differently, because they'd seen how close it came. One miscalculation, 1 fraction of a second, and Vera Cruz would have become famous for all the wrong reasons. Number 18. Ernest Borgnine, playing the brutish member of Lancaster's gang, wasn't acting, at least not completely. Borgnine was method before method was cool. He stayed in character between takes, kept the rough edge, the aggressive energy. It unsettled people. During lunch breaks, while everyone else relaxed, Borgnine would sit apart, maintaining the mindset of a violent mercenary. Some cast members avoided him. Others thought he was taking it too far. But Aldrich encouraged it. He told Borgnine, "Make them uncomfortable. That's your job." So Borgnine pushed further. In one scene, he had to threaten a Mexican villager. The script called for intimidation, maybe a shove. Borgnine grabbed the extra by the throat, lifted him off the ground, and held him there while delivering his line. The extra, terrified, struggled for real. Aldrich let the cameras roll. When he finally called cut, the extra was furious. Borgnine apologized, but not convincingly. Lancaster pulled Aldrich aside and told him to control his actor before someone got hurt. Aldrich refused. He said the danger was the point. Vera Cruz wasn't a safe movie. It wasn't a comfortable movie. And if the actors felt threatened, if the violence felt real, that's because it was supposed to. Borgnine never dialed it back, and his performance, terrifying and unhinged, became one of the film's most memorable elements. Because he understood something the others didn't. In a movie about men who kill for money, safety was a luxury no one could afford. Number 19. The film's iconic final image, The shot that closed the movie and burned into memory wasn't planned. After the climactic confrontation, with bodies on the ground and the treasure scattered, Aldrich wanted something definitive, something that summarized the entire film in a single frame. He tried different angles, different compositions. Nothing felt right. Then, as the sun dropped toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert, Aldrich saw it. Cooper's silhouette walking away, alone. No music, no dialogue, just the crunch of boots on dirt and the wind. He grabbed the camera operator and said, "Follow him. Don't stop until I tell you." They rolled. Cooper, exhausted from the day's filming, just walked. He didn't know the camera was still on him. He wasn't performing. He was just leaving, heading back toward the trailers, ready to collapse. But something about that walk, the weight in his shoulders, the way he moved like a man carrying too many ghosts, it was perfect. Aldrich let it run until Cooper disappeared into the distance, until he was just a speck against the setting sun. Then, cut. When Aldrich showed the footage to the editors, they knew immediately. That was the ending. Not a shootout, not a resolution, just a man walking away from violence he couldn't escape. It wasn't closure, it was exhaustion. And for a film that refused to offer easy answers, it was the only way to end. Number 20. Vera Cruz made money, but it nearly bankrupted the production company. The budget overruns in Mexico, the delays, the equipment failures, the security costs, everything added up. What was supposed to cost $1.7 million ended up closer to $3 million. The investors panicked. Some pulled out mid-production. Aldrich had to beg, borrow, and leverage his own career to keep cameras rolling. He mortgaged his house, put up his own money, told everyone who'd listen that this film would be worth it. And he was right, but not fast enough. By the time Vera Cruz hit theaters and started turning profit, the damage was done. Aldrich came out of it financially wounded, his reputation as a director who couldn't control budgets cemented. He wouldn't direct another major studio film for 3 years. The actors got paid, the crew got paid, but Aldrich, the man who fought for every frame, who nearly died in that desert alongside his cast, walked away with almost nothing. He later said Vera Cruz cost him his financial security, but bought him his artistic freedom, because after that, no studio expected him to play it safe. They knew what they were getting, a director who'd burn everything down to make the film he wanted. And sometimes, that's exactly what Hollywood needs. Someone crazy enough to bet it all on a vision, even if the vision leaves you broke.